Start. Right. So last class we have seen how to bind the data to a what? Uh, how to bind work area and how to bind what? Internal table. Okay. Now the next requirement is this one. Yeah. Here our view should contain two tables. Two tables. In the first table, we have to default the data. Data should be what? Defaulted. Means the moment the view is displayed, okay, I should display the sales orders in the table. Then in the runtime, I will select a row in the first table. The moment I select a row, so you can see the validation here. Whenever the user selects a row, the corresponding sales items should be displayed in what? Second table. So what is the action we are performing here? We are doing the selection. The moment you select, it should display the corresponding sales items in the second table. So the thing we need to focus here is how to default the data. How to default the data, and what is the event triggered whenever we select a row in the table. The moment you select only, I should get the items. Okay. So in the earlier scenario, in the earlier last class, we have created a node without referring to any dictionary structure. Under that node we have created the attributes what? Manually. So if I open my last example, if I go to object navigator, right? So in this fifth example, let me open that. Yeah, in this fifth example, if you double click on the view, or let me double click on the view 2, right? So when I double click on the view 2, if you see the context here, okay, in the context, if you see the node VBAK node, we are not referring to any what? Dictionary structure. We have created a blank node. Under that node, we have created some three attributes manually. So what is the change I want to do now? I want to create the node referring to what? Dictionary structure. Okay, that is the change I want to do. And yeah, that is the change I want to do. Okay, so let us create this component first. So I'll go to object navigator, SCAT. Okay, I'll choose what? Webdynpro component. I'll give the component name as 6Z10AMWD6. Create the object. Yes. Okay. So what is this? Defaulting what? Table data and what? Identifying what? Selected row. Okay, identifying the selected row. I'll give the window. I'll give the window name underscore window. We require only one view. Let me give the view name as what? V1. Continue. Right. I'll save it in the local object. Amar, you're logged in. Amar.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Fine, fine, fine.
Okay.
Yeah. You can mute your speakers.
Yeah, yes.
Done. So here, this is a component I created. So we require only what? One view. Okay. So we have created that view. Done. And this, what is the layout I require for the view? We require two tables. So already we know, before designing the layout, we have to visualize the layout. Based on that visualization, we have to create what? Context. So we require two tables here. Table is always bounded with what? Nodes. Table is always bounded with a node. So I'm going to create two nodes. Okay, one node is should refer to what sales document header data, another node should refer to what sales document item data. In the first table, what are the columns I want to display? Sales document, date, time, and the person who has created. In the second table, I have to display the sales document item number, material number, and what net value. Okay, so before I create the context, let me check whether I am having any structures which represent this particular four fields. So I'll go to ABAP dictionary. So let me check whether I am having this structure or not. ZCVBAK display. Yeah, you can see I am having one custom structure ZCVBAK which has got how many fields? Four fields. Okay. Then another structure is a ZCVBAP which has got what? Four fields. So make sure that you create these structures. If you don't have these structures also, I can refer to this what standard structure what VBAK. But if you refer to this structure, you'll have what many fields. I require only what four fields from VBAK and four fields from what VBAP. So that's the reason. Assume that we are already having those structures. I'll refer to that particular structures. Okay, right. So let me go back to object navigator. So what I have to do now, I have to create the context. Where I have to create the context? Should I create the context at view level or at component level? Where I should create the context? Should I create a component context or should I create a view context? Hmm? Why view context? Why I should create the context at view context only in this case? I have only one view. I have only one view. I need not share this data with what? Other view. That's the reason I'll create the context at what? View level. Already we know now. When do we create the context at component level? If you want to share the data across the views, it should be available globally. And in that cases, we'll create the context at what component level and we'll map it to what source and what target views. But in this case, overall we are having only what one view. So I can directly create the context at what view level. I can create at component level also, but unnecessarily again I have to map it from what component level to the only view. That is the reason I'll create at what view level. So these are all things are performance issues. We should identify, we should realize where we have to create the context directly at the view level or what component level. If I create at the component level, it is an expensive task. Why? Because the lifetime of the component context is what throughout the component. It will be available as long as the component is active. Okay, so I don't require it. I want it only at what view level. So I'll directly go to the view level, right? So let me open it in change mode as part of what root context, sorry, as part of context tab under what root context. We call this as what root context. Okay, so under this root context I'll create two nodes. One is VBAK node, another is what VBAP node. So right click on the root context, create what node, right click on the root context, create node name. You can give any name, you can give any name. Let me give the node name as VBAK underscore node. The node name is VBAK underscore node. Earlier what I did, I created a blank node. Under that node I created the attributes manually. But since I am having a dictionary structure which is holding these four fields, I'll refer to that particular dictionary structure. That dictionary structure can be a standard structure or it can be what custom structure. Okay, so this is my node name dictionary structure. I can refer to VBAK also, but again it is expensive task because it is having what many fields. I am interested only in what four fields. That is the reason I created one custom structure. Let me refer to that custom structure. So I'll give the name as what ZC VBAK. Done. What is the cardinality I have to choose? I am creating this node to bind with what table. A table can accommodate what multiple records. That is the reason I'll choose the cardinality as either 0 to n or what 1 to n. So I'll go for what 0 to n. 0 to n means either 0 records or what? Multiple records. So I'll go for 0 to n. Am I clear? So node name is so and so. Provide the dictionary structure. Now I need to create the attributes from what? Structure. So I'll click on the button what? Add attributes from what? Structure. Online, please stop me if you have any questions. Okay, done. So after giving the structure name, I'll click on what? Add attributes from what? Structure. So when I click on this, it is going to show you the fields available in that particular structure. I am interested in all the four fields, so let me select what? All the four fields. Right, I'll select all the four fields. Continue. So you can see now the node is created with what? How many attributes? Four attributes. Then I require what? One more node to bind with what? The second table. So again under root context, not under what? Child. Again under what? Root context. So where we create, that is important. In this context, there is no link between the VBAK node and what? VBAP node. So I'll directly create under what? Root context. Right click on the root context, create node. I'll give the node name as what? VBAP underscore node. Here also I'll refer to the dictionary structure what? ZC VBAP. Again here I'll bind with what? Multiple records. So again I require the cardinality as what? 0 to n. So I'll choose the cardinality as what? 0 to n. I'll choose the attributes from the structure. It has got some four fields. Let me select all the four fields. Continue. Done. So the second node is created with what? Four attributes. Done. So my context is what? Ready now. Context is ready. Now I need to what? Design the what? Layout. I need to design the layout. So let us go to the view layout. Right. So I require what? How many tables? Two tables. Okay. So what I can do in the last class, I have designed the table by using what? Wizard. Here also I can design it by using what? Wizard, or you can create the table what? Manually. Okay, so I'll right click on the table. What I can say? Sorry, right click on what? Root to element container. Say what? Insert element. Provide what? Element name and provide the type of the table. What is the type of view element? Yes, table. The type of view element is what? Table. Okay, I can create like this, or else let me cancel. I'll go to what? Wizard. In the wizard, under standard, we have what? Dynpro, form and what? Table. So I'll go for what? Table. Continue. Done. It is asking what? Context node. It is asking the context node. Let me choose a context node. We have how many nodes? See, you have to what? Analyze this one. What I am trying to create? Table. So when I'm trying to create the table, see once again, when I'm trying to create the table, here it is asking the context node. So when I click on the context, what is enabled here? Nodes are enabled, not the attribute. So what is the meaning? Table is always bounded with what? Binded with what? Nodes, not with the individual attribute. So let me choose the first node. What is that? VBAK node. Continue. Done. It has got how many attributes? That node has got four attributes. If you want all the four attributes, select this one. Otherwise just you can deselect. I want all the four attributes. For this four attributes, what is the UI element it is proposing? Text view. We are going to see the columns na? So these UI elements are what? Text view. Okay, so let me choose text view only. Continue. Okay, let me cancel once again. I'm canceling. Go to code wizard. I'll choose table. Right, context node, I'll choose it as what? VBAK node. Done. I'll choose what? Continue. Right. Oh, what happened? Oh, acha. It has created what? Many tables. Let me remove all these things. Right click on this. How to remove? Remove element. Remove element. Let me do it from the beginning. Okay, so I'll choose root element container. Go to code wizard. Table. Context node is what? VBAK node. Continue. Right, so for this table I want the header. So under table you can see we have what? Table header. What is the U element here? Caption. For the caption U element, what is the important property that we know? Text property. So here I'll give the text as what? sales orders. So I'll get the header as what? Sales orders. I got the address sales orders. And already in the last class we have seen what is the important property for table. The important property for table is what? Yes, the important for table is what? Data source. If you scroll down here, you can see what is the property bounded data source. This data source property is binded with what? Our node. So every UI element will contain some important properties. There will be many properties. It is not possible for us to remember each and every property, but you'll have some important properties. At least you should remember that. So the important property for table is what? Data source. It is already always binded with what? Node. Done. Then I require one more table. Na? So again I'll select what? Root element container. Go to code wizard. I'll choose table. Context node. This time I'll choose a context node as what? VBAP node. It has got 4 attributes. I'm interested in all the 4 attributes. Continue. Yeah, you can observe now. One more table got created. For this table also, let me give what? Table header. I'll give the table header here somewhere here. Text. I'll give the text as what? Sales. What? Items. I'll give the text as what? Sales items. Done. So when I do syntax check, done. As of now there are no errors. So what I did here, I created the component with a default window and view. Then as part of the view, first I created the context visualizing the layout. My layout requirement is what? We should have two tables. Tables are always bounded on what? Binded with what? Nodes. That's the reason I created the nodes with the cardinality as what? 0 to n. Then I have designed the table using what? Wizard. By default, one property will be set. What is the property? Yes, data source property. Done. Save it. Check it. Done. Okay. Then by default, already we know this window will be embedded to what? The view will be embedded to what? Window. Let me create the application. How do you create the application? Right click on the component and I'll say create what? Webdynpro application. I'll give the application name as what? Underscore app6. Continue. Done. Let me save it. Right. We need to activate your whole component. So right click on the component and say activate. Right. The entire component is what? Activated. So as of now, my table is my view is having what? Two tables. Let me execute this once and check the appearance of the view. Right. So if I double click on the view, it is what? Active. If I double click on the window, it is also what? Active. Let me execute our application. So right click on the application and say what? Test. Right. So you can observe now we are having what? Two views. Am I clear? Okay. So let us implement the validations now. We are having two views. Done. So what is the validation I require? By data should be what? Defaulted. What should be defaulted here? Sales orders should be defaulted. Some sales orders has to be defaulted. So if you take our reports, in reports, if you want to default anything, we handle a event called as initialization event. Right. If you take our module pool, we do that in the PBO event, process before output event, because that is the first event triggered. Okay. Similarly, in webdynpro also, every view will contain some life cycle methods. Every view will contain what? Hook methods. We call it as what? Hook methods, or we call it as what? Life cycle methods. Hook methods are what? Life cycle methods. Okay. So whenever the view is about to load, SAP will call a method. See here at the view level. If I double click on the view level, if you go to the methods tab, in the methods tab you can see here there are many methods available. These methods gets executed at different places during the view rendering. View rendering means that view display, view refresh, all those things. Okay. One of the method you can see what is this wd do what init. This method you can compare similar to what initialization event. We know that initialization event will be triggered only once in the lifetime of the entire selection screen. Similarly, wd_init method will be called only once during the lifetime of the view. So whenever the view is about to display, it will call which method? wd_init. So you can see the description here, controller initialization method. Now you can observe one more thing here. As of now we are at what level? View level. Let me go to component controller. In the component controller also, if you go to methods, do we have that method wd_init? Yes, we have what? wd_init. Let me go to the window level. In window level also we are having what? So what I mean to say is this wd_init method is available at all the three levels: component controller level, window controller level, or what? And what? View controller level. Okay, so as of now let us stick to what? View controller. Okay, so whenever the view is about to render, whenever the view is about to display, what is the first method called by the framework? Yes, wd do init. So we can implement this method to default the data in the view UI elements. We can implement this method to default the data in the view UI element. So let what type of method this is? A normal method. Okay, am I clear? We have normal method, we have what? Event handler method, we have what? Supply function. Already we know about what? Event handler method. This gets triggered whenever the event is what? Raised. We have seen it for button, we have seen it for what? Input field. Okay, as of now it is a normal method. Let me implement this. Double click on what? wd do init. Done. Okay, online, hope it's clear so far. Any questions, please ask me. Any questions so far? Classroom. Hmm? Right. So now what is the logic you have tried now? You have tried the logic to default what? Some sales orders. Okay, so you'll have many sales orders in VBAK table na? So I should get some sales orders and display it in my first table. Okay, so what I require here? Internal table. That internal table should contain how many fields? Four fields, because what are the node I created for that, this node also contains what? Four attributes. So let me declare the internal table. So the first step I have to do in this method is what? Get what? Sales order. So I require an internal table. Let me declare. So data what? T underscore VBAK type what? Table of what is the structure we have? GCVB. I can refer to what? Dictionary structure. Done. Let me get the data. Select Weblen ERDAT ZET from what? VBAK into table. What is the internal table? T underscore VBAK. I'll say up to what? Some what? 50 rows. Up to 50 rows. Done. Then if size of RC equal to 0, if size of R is equal to what you have to do, whatever the internal table data we have, this we have to bind, this you have to display inside which table? This first table. This first table is bounded with what node? VBAK node. So already we know we cannot directly refer to the UI elements. We have to refer to what? Bounded nodes and what? Attributes. The first table is binded with which node? VBAK node. So I have to set this internal table data to which node? To what? VBAK node. So how do you proceed now? Huh? How? My data is there in this particular internal table. This internal table data you have to display it in what? First table. But I cannot directly refer to what? UI elements. I have to refer to the bounded nodes and attributes. My first table is binded with which node? VBAK node. Means I have to set this internal table data to which node? VBAK node. So how do you proceed? How do you proceed? Already I discussed in the last class. How do you proceed, Amit? Shafi.
By using method
By using method. Which method? Correct.
methods.
Which method?
um,
Hmm. Okay, I'll explain. Yeah. I'll explain once again. What is the agenda now? This internal table data you have to bind with which node? VBAK node. VBAK node is a child of what? Child of what? Root context. This we call it as what? See, in the interview perspective also these terminologies are important. Am I clear? So this all the nodes, attributes, whatever we create it as a child of what? Root context. So I have to set the data for this our node means we have to travel from top to bottom. Now. I have to travel from this root context to our context. Root context is represented by which interface? Yes, already we know we have the interface what if underscore wd underscore context underscore. Let's see, already detailed notes is there, already I've shared it, please refer to that. Every day I'm updating these notes. I don't know how many of you are concentrating. If you open these notes, everything whatever I'm talking is documented here. Every day I'm updating these notes. Just read this. Make clear in the interview perspective, no one will ask us to develop the code. They'll ask you the send this points only. Okay, so detailed thing is there here, right? Okay, so what you have to do now? I have to get the reference of our node. Our node is a child of what? Root node. This root context is represented by which interface? If underscore wd underscore what? Context underscore node. For this interface, object is given by SAP itself, na? And that object is available in the form of what? View attribute. What is that object name? Yes, wd underscore what? Context, which is the object of which interface? If wd context node. So by using this object, okay, this interface has got one method. What is that method? Already we have seen. What is this? Get child node. So we have to get the reference of what? Our node. What is this method? Instance method. How do you call the instance methods? By using what? Object. What is the object of this interface given by SAP? wd underscore what? Context. So using this, I'll try to call this method. Before calling this method, what you have to do? We have to check the signature of the method. What is the signature of this method? Put the cursor here, go to what? Parameters. There is a parameter index which is what? Optional. Leave it. What is the other parameter which is mandatory? Name. Type what? String. What it is expecting? Name of what? Lower level node. What is the name of our lower level node? VBAK underscore node. What does it do? It returns. Type ref2 means what? Object of which interface? It returns the object of what? Same interface now. It returns the object of what? Same interface. I am interested to receive this object. So for that I need to declare what? Reference. Huh? So what I have to do if size of r is equal to 0, yes, what is that? Get the reference of the node. Which node? VBAK underscore node. How to get the reference? Reference in the sense what? Address. Travel. You have to travel from root to child. So it is going to return the reference. To receive that reference, I'll declare my local reference type ref2. It is returning the object of which interface? If wd context node. So I declare the reference of what? If wd context node. Then can I use pattern? Yes, because I have to call what? A global class method. I have to call a global class method. So I'll go to pattern, above objects pattern. What is that? What is the object? wd underscore context. What is the interface? If wd context node. What is the method? Get child node. Get child node. Right? Index is optional. What else? Name is mandatory. What is the name of our lower level node? VBAK underscore what? Node returns the reference I'll receive in my reference. What is that? Context underscore VBAK underscore what? Nodes. Am I clear? So from the root, I got the reference of our child node. Then what I have to do? I have to check whether the reference is available or not. If context underscore VBAK underscore node is what? Bound, not initial. Bound means what? Not initial, not empty. If it is bound, what you have to do? By using this reference, I have to bind the data to this node. This node is bounded with what? Table. How do you bind the data to the table? Bind underscore table. So last class we have seen. So we got the reference of this interface. In the same interface, we have another method. What? Bind table. What is this method? Instance method. How do we access instance methods? By using what? Object. What is the reference of our node? This one. So by using this, I'll call the method bind underscore table. What is the parameters of this? The two importing parameters are what? Optional. First one is what? Mandatory. What is this? New underscore items is what? Mandatory. Any table. So I have to bind the data to this only mandatory parameter. So I can use pattern here also. I'll go to pattern. Okay. Now, can I use this object? Can I use this object? Okay. What happens if I use this object? What happens if I use this object? When I call the method what? Bind underscore what? Table. So let me check, let me show you what happens. New items. What is the internal table? T underscore what? VBAK. Other parameters are what? Optional. Other parameters are optional. What is this? Endif. And here also what? Endif. Let me use pretty printer. Okay, done. Activate this once again. Done. So can anyone tell me what happens if I execute my application now? What happens? Anyone? Not practice. VBAK is bound to context VBAK. So what happened, Samit? I am not getting any syntax error. So let's see whether we'll get any runtime error. So see here, observe this carefully. I'm activating that once again. Let me execute. So I'm trying to execute my application. It will try to load the view now. Whenever the view is about to load, what is the method it calls? wd do init. Do we have implementation for that wd do init? Yes, we have the implementation. Let's see what happens when I test it. I got some error. What is that? Number of elements. Number of elements in a collection of node V1 violates a what? Cardinality. Violates a cardinality. Termination Rabax underscore what? State it seems. Okay. One second. I'll double click on the application. Let me collect the URL. I'll collect the URL. Let me run it in the Google Chrome. Earlier I ran it in what? Internet Explorer. Now I'm running in what? Google Chrome. Let me check whether it is accepting or not. Okay. It is asking for what? Credentials. I got what? Same error. Okay, I got the similar error, so no change. Done. Let me go to ST22. I'll go to what? ST22 for analyzing that dump analysis. Let me check whether it is captured here or not. So I went to what? ST22. I'll click on today. Okay. So I got some error here. Double click on this. You understood what I'm trying to show? I'm trying to analyze my error in that ST22. Okay, what is the error I got? An exception has occurred that was not caught. Okay, so can we understand anything here? Let me check. Exceptions also were not caught anywhere under the call hierarchy. Done. Scroll down. Same kind of error. What is that? An exception occurred which is explained in more detail below. The exception which is assigned to the class CXWD context was not caught and therefore caused a runtime error. The reason for the exception is number of elements in the collection of the node V1 violates the cardinality. So can anyone elaborate what you understood? Yes. The number of elements in the collection of node V1 violates the cardinality. Anyone? See here, simple understanding. Let me go back to the method. Good. Okay. So if I double click on the view, if I go to the methods, what is the method? WD do init. So what was our agenda? Our internal table data, we have to bind with which node? VBIK node. So we have to travel from top to bottom now. So this is represented by which object? WD underscore context. From this root, I have to get the reference of what? Child. How to get the reference? We are used what? WD context. What is the method? Get child node. We are giving the node name. We got the reference. This reference is also object of what? Same interface. Now, using this reference only, I have to set the data. Na? Using this reference is pointing to which node? VBAK node only. Na? So using this only, I have to call which method? Bind table. But I am trying to call this bind table by what object? WD context. WD context is always refers to root. Na? Root cardinality is what? 1 is to 1. What is the method I used? Bind table. So bind table means cardinality should be what? 0 to n or what? 1 to n. That's why it is giving an error saying what? Number of elements in the collection of node V1 violates the cardinality. Am I clear? Okay. So what is the adjustment I have to do now? Instead of using WD context, what is the reference I got for that node? Context underscore VBAK underscore what? Node bind table. If you see the cardinality of our node, what is the cardinality? Which n is what? Which can accommodate what? Multiple data, multiple records. So this should work fine now, na? Right? So I'm calling that bind table and I'm passing that particular internal table. So check it, activate this. Clear? Okay, right click on the component and say what? Activate. When I execute once again, what happened? The data got what? Defaulted. The data got defaulted. Am I clear? So I got how many records here? Some 50 records I got. I got some 50 records. So how to bind the data? Bind table. I can write like this or going forward, I may write like this. So both will be same. Or what is the method I have to call? Yes, bind table. Na? I have to call which method? Bind table. What is the signature of this method? It has got only one mandatory importing parameters, which is expecting any table. So since it is having only one mandatory parameter, now onwards, I would be saying like this: context VBAK node Okay. And another syntax for calling the method bind table in the parentheses directly I'll give what t underscore what VVA. So it will take this value for what mandatory parameter. Understood? So instead of using pattern all those things, I'll be using like this now onwards. Done. Right? So when I activate and re-execute once again, then I'll get the data. What is the next requirement now? Left hand side I'll select a row. The moment I select a row on the left hand side, I have to identify the selected row, sales or document number. For that I have to get what? Items and display it here. Na? Right? So whenever I select a row, so we should know what is the event triggered when I select a row in the table. Okay, if you take our module pool, PAI events. Whenever we select a row in the table, the event triggered is what? PAI. Here in Webdynpro view, whenever we select a row in the table, okay, it will trigger an event called as on lead select. So what I'll do is, I'm going to perform the action in which table? Table 1. Na? So I need to associate the event. So let me go to the view layout. Let me go to the view layout. This is a view layout. We have what? Two tables. What is the only property which we know which is important for the table so far? Data source property. Now for the first table itself, if you scroll down, there are many events. There are many events. There are many events. One of the event is what? On lead select. So what you have to understand, on lead select is the event triggered whenever we select a row in the table. So how do we handle the events in Webdynpro? Already we know we have to provide what? Action name. Whenever we create an action, what happens? A corresponding event handler method gets generated with what naming standard? On action followed by what? Action name. Am I clear? So for this first table, what is the event? On lead select, I'll just click on this. It is asking what? Action name. I'll give the action, any name I can give. I'll give the action name as what? Get what? Sales underscore what? Items. I'll give the description as get sales items for what? Selected, for selected what? Sales order. So on behalf of this action, what happens? A event handler method gets generated. What is that method name? Always on action followed by what? Action name. So continue, right? Action is associated. Now if you see the action tab here, what is the action name? Get underscore sales underscore items. What is the corresponding method which gets generated on behalf of this action? If you go to methods tab, if you go to method list, what is that? On action followed by what? Action name. What is this method type? Event handler means this method gets executed whenever the event is triggered. When this event gets triggered, when this method gets executed, whenever I select a row in the table. Whenever I select a row in the table, what is the event triggered by SAP? On lead select. The corresponding event handler method gets executed. So let me write the logic. I have tried the logic inside this particular. Any question so far? Please ask. So now, can anyone tell me what is the business logic I have to write here? What is the business logic I have to write here? What is the agenda? I have to identify the selected row, and based on that selected row, we have to get the corresponding sales items and display that sales items in the second table. So can anyone guide me? How do we do it? Yes, I want the approach. By using get cursor, we are not in ABAP, Ashok. If it is a list, if you have displayed the output by using write statement on the LPS screen, we can use that get cursor, ID technique, all those things. But this is not a LPS. This is a browser, na? Hmm?
Can we read the data from LTV back? We already set the data, LTV back.
Okay. But which data you'll read? How do we identify that selected row? That internal table, that internal table is having many records, around 50 records. I don't know on which record I'll select. So how do we identify the selected record? So what the approach should be, there should be some corresponding method. There should be some corresponding method for identifying what? Selected record. If you know object-oriented ABAP in ALV reporting, we use a method called as get selected row. Get selected row to identify the row in the ALV grid. But this is not a grid here, it's a table displayed in the browser. So what you have to do is to identify the what selected row in the same interface. In the same interface there is a method called as what? Get static attributes. Okay, so before we discuss this method, see, the approach I'm expecting is the view is displayed now. Assume that this is runtime. The view is displayed. User is going to interact with what table? First table. So on the first table only, we have to identify what? Selected row. So I'm performing the action on this table, right? This table is linked, is bounded, is binded with what node? VBAK node. So first of all, we have to get the reference of which node? VBAK node. Am I clear what I am telling? The user is performing the action on this table. Na? Already we know in Webdynpro, I cannot directly refer to the UI elements. I have to refer to what? Corresponding binded nodes and what? Attributes. This first table is binded with what node? VBAK node. So first of all, I have to get the reference of which node? VBAK node. Using that reference, I should call that method get static attributes to identify what? Selected row. Understood? Already we know to read a single attribute value, what is the method we use? Get attribute. Na? But this is not a what? Single value, it is a row, it's a record. So to read a single record, what is the method I have to call? Get static attribute. So first of all, we have to get the reference of which node? VBAK node. See, again, I can write the code in 2 minutes, but we should know the process. Okay, the user is performing the action on which UI element? Table UI element. Table UI element is bounded with what node? VBAK node. So first of all, you have to get the reference of which node? VBAK node. Am I clear? But okay, should I get the reference of VBAK node, or can I use the reference of that node already which you have got in WD unit? In WD do unit also, already I got the reference of which node? VBAK node. Can I use this in that event handler method? Here we are getting the reference of the same node. Now, can I use this? Can I use this in that event handler method? Yes or no? In the WD unit also I got the reference. Again I should get the reference here. I can write the code, but it is a redundancy. Na? It is a redundancy. But I'll get the reference once again because we don't know at this stage how to avoid the redundancy. But most of the people, what they are doing still is, wherever they want the reference, everywhere they are getting the reference, which is not a good programming practice. Make sure that you get the reference only once. I can use it throughout the component wherever I want. So in that way you have to write the code. Okay, if I get the reference here also, output will come, but our agenda is not to achieve the output. How better we write the code. We have to avoid the redundancy. But at this stage, we don't know. So let us get the reference once again. So what you have to do here also, get the reference of the node. Which node? A VBAK node. Again the same story. VBAK node is a child of what? Root context. Root context is represented by which interface? If WD context node. What is the object of that interface? WD underscore context. So using that object, I have to call which method? Get child node. Get child node will take what? Node name as input, returns the reference of the node, which is of type interface what? If WD context node. Okay. So data again also what? Context underscore VBAK underscore node, type what? Ref2. What is the interface? If WD context node. So let me use the pattern. I'll go to pattern. You have to always start from the root. What is the root object? WD context. What is the root interface? If WD context node. What is the method for getting the reference of the new node? Get child node. Get child node. What is the node name? Yes, VBAK what? Node. What is the reference? Context underscore VBAK underscore what? Node. So I'll get the reference of VBAK node inside this particular object. Then as usual, what you will say? If context underscore VBAK node is what? Bound. Means if it is not initial, what I have to do? Yes, I have to what? Identify the what? Selected row. I have to identify the selected row. So this is an object of which interface? If WD what? Context node. If you go back to this interface, in this interface only we have one method what? Get static attributes. What method this is? Instance. How to call instant methods? By using what? Object. What is the object I got in the previous step? Context underscore VBAK underscore node. Okay. Am I clear? Before calling the method, what you will do? You will check the signature of the method. So let me go to what? Parameters. Right. Index is what? Optional. Leave it. What does it do? Exporting what? Data. What data? Row. It is exporting what? It is exporting, returning what? Data. So in our context, what is the UI element table? Na? Each record of the table is a row only. Na? So I require a work area to store that selected row. Na? So let me declare work area. Data what? W underscore VBAK type. What is the structure? ZC VBAK. Am I clear? So I'll use a pattern. ABAP objects pattern. What is the reference? Yes, context underscore VBAK node. What is the method? Get underscore static underscore what? Attributes. Importing. What is the work area? W underscore what? VBAK. Done. Am I clear? So all the methods are part of which interface? If WD context node. What are the methods we have used so far? Get attribute, set attribute, get child node, bind structure, bind table, and what? Get static attributes. Okay. So what is the next step now? If W underscore VBAK is what? Not initial. If it is not blank, what I have to do? Yes, get what? Corresponding what? Sales items of what? Selected sales order. Get the corresponding sales items of what? Selected sales orders. Each sales order might contain multiple items. Na? So I require what? Internal table. So data T underscore what? VBAP. What is the custom structure we have? ZC VBAP. Get the data. Select what? VBLN, POSNR, material number, NETWR from what? VBAP into table. What is the internal table I declared? T underscore VBAP where Weblen equal to where is the selected sales order? W underscore VBAK hyphen Weblen. This work area contains all the four fields. Na? I need to refer to which field? VBLN. Then if what? If what? Size of ours equal to 0 means what? Sales items are available. Na? So this internal table, I have to bind it to my second table. Na? Second table is second UI element, second table is bounded with which node? VBAP node. So I have to bind the data to this node. Na? This node is a child of what? Child of root. Na? Again you have to get the reference of which node? VBAP node. Understood? So directly I cannot bind. You have to get the reference. So if size of RC equal to 0, what do you have to say? Get the what? Reference of the node. Which node? VBAP underscore node. So data what? Context underscore VBAP underscore node type ref2. What is the interface? If WD context node, same story. Okay, or else declare it above only. Right? So VBAP node is a child of root. Na? Not, it's not the child of VBAP, it is a child of what? Root. So again, what is the root object? Same. What is that? WD underscore what? Context. WD underscore context. What is the method you have to call? Get child node. Get child node. Done. What is the node name? What is the node name? Yes. VBAP underscore what? Node. What is the reference? Yes. Context underscore VBAP underscore what? Node. Again what? If what? Context underscore VBAP underscore node is what? Is bound. Is bound. What you have to do? Bind what? Sales items. How do you, what is the internal table? T underscore what? VBAP. How do you bind the internal table? Just now we have seen. Context VBAP node of what? Bind table. What is the internal table? T underscore what? VBAP. Understood? That's all. Na? Okay. End if. End if. Then else. Else for this if one. Else for this one. Okay, if size of bar is equal to 0, we are getting there. Else, what you have to do? We have to what? Flash what? Message to indicate what? No sales items. At this stage, we don't know how to flash messages in what? Webdynpro. So we'll discuss it as and when required. And if, then do we require another end if anywhere? Yeah, for this one. If W underscore VBAK is what? Not initial, and for this one also. Yeah, already I gave one. Done. Save it. Check it. No errors. Activate. Let me use pretty printer. I'll debug, then you'll understand. Okay. So let me execute once, then I'll debug. Is it clear? So everything will revolve around what? Context only. Once you know what context you have to create, then coding part will be what? Easy. Done. Okay. So I'll select what? 4971. Yeah. What happened? I got only one sales item. Might be it has got only one sales item. I'll choose 4973. Yes. It has got four sales items. Let me choose 4976. Yes. Getting what? Refresh. So the moment you select this, what is the event triggered? On lead select. On lead select. Done. Working absolutely fine. Let me debug this. So I'll debug both the methods. I'll put the breakpoints in what? WD do init. I'm setting the external breakpoint. I'll also set the breakpoint in the event handler method. Done. So when I start the execution, so overall, how many methods we implemented? Two methods, WD do init, and another one is event handler method for that on lead select event. Okay. So when I test it, what is the first method which gets called? WD do init. So what is the logic I have to write there? See, it is going to the debugging mode. Before displaying the view content, it is going to what? WD do init method of which view? Viewer. So what you are doing in this? First you are getting the default sales orders. So when I say F5, how many sales orders? 50 sales orders. This sales orders I have to bind with which node? Yeah, I have to bind with what? VBAK node. So sorry, I have to bind with the first table, but I cannot directly identify the table in the program now. So I have to refer by what? Node. The first table is binded with which node? VBAK node. So this internal table data we have to bind with what? VBAK node. So you have to get the address of that node now. You have to get the reference of that node. Where is that node available? It is a child of what? Root. What is the root context object? WD underscore what? Context. How to get the reference of any node? By using a method what? Get child node. By using a method called as what? Get child node. Okay. So I'm getting the reference here. If you see context VBAK node, as of now it is what? Initial. Okay. If size of r is equal to 0, yes, size of r is equal to 0. What you are doing now? We are trying to get the reference of our node VBAK node. So when I say F6, did I got the reference? Yes, I got the reference of that particular node. Using that reference, if it is bound means what? If it is a object, if it is not initial, what I am doing here? I am binding that particular table. Bind table I am saying. Bind table T underscore VBAK. So this reference is linked with which node? VBAK node. So when I say F8, yes, I got the data. So before displaying the view to us, what is the method which got called, which got executed? WD do what? Init. Done. Now I'll choose what? In the runtime. This is my runtime now. I'll choose what? 4972. So I'm performing the action on what? Table. Na? Whenever I select a row in the table, what is the event triggered? On lead select. So I gave the breakpoint for that event handler method. Yeah, I've selected it. What happened? It is going to what? On lead select event got triggered. For that on lead select event, we have an action. For that action, we have an event handler method. It is stopping there. So what I have to, what is the logic I have to write here? I have to identify with what row I have selected. What row I have selected. So the user is performing the action on this table. This table is binded with what node? VBAK node. So again I have to get the reference of what? VBAK node. Already we got the reference where? In the WD, but it is a local reference. It is a local variable. Once you come out of that method, the reference got what? Destroyed. You can cross check here. Context VBAK is again what? Initial, because I declared one more variable that got destroyed already. So again I am getting the reference. This VBAK node is a child of root now. So again I am getting the reference. Yes, I got the reference. What I have to do now? If it is bound, by using that reference, how to identify the selected row? What is the method I have to call? Get static attributes, which returns the work area. Na? So I declared my work area here. If you see the work area, W underscore what? VBAK. As of now, nothing is there. So I am calling that method now. F6 I'll say. I got the data. You can see here when double click on this, see that work area in the structure tab. What is the WebLen? 4972 date, time and what? The person. Am I clear? In the structure tab. Done. Now, if it is not what? Initial. Yes, it is not initial. What I have to do? Get the corresponding sales item into the internal table. What is the internal table I declared here? T underscore VBAP as of now what? 0. I am getting the items. F5. How many items I got? Yes, 4 items. If you see T underscore VBAP in the tables tab, I got what? 4 items. Done. This internal table data I have to display it in the second table. Second table is bounded with what node? VBAP node. So I have to get the address of VBAP node. VBAP node is a child of root context. So same story here. What I am doing here? Again by using root context, I am getting the reference of that node, VBAP node. That I'll get inside what? Context VBAP node. Is as of now initial. So when I say F6, yes, I got the what? Reference. Using that reference, how do you bind the internal table? You have to call a method what? Bind table. So I bind it, I got the data. Am I clear? So this is the way you need to write the coding in what? Webdynpro. Any questions?
One question here. Suppose if I want to read the first row only, can I use the t underscore vback read table index 1 into the work area underscore vback here
Now again,
without binding node?
without
Because tvback is got already filled in the init table, right? Init method. So can I access this t underscore vback data in that onLead method?
no, because again this is a local internal table, na? Local
Okay,
internal table. So once a control comes out of this method, this gets what? Destroyed. So here,
but yeah, that is the question I have because this is written in init method, right? Init method is will be the data will be throughout it will be available, right?
no. I have not said like that. I said that WD unit method will be called only once in the lifetime of the view. I have not said data. That method gets executed only once in the lifetime of what? Every view. This method gets called only once in the lifetime of the view. Okay. So in this method, I declared some local internal table. This internal table data, the lifetime of this local internal is only within this method. Na? Once a view is displayed, means what? The control has came out of this method. The data in the internal will already got what? Destroyed. But before destroyed, I already displayed on what? Table. That's why I'm able to see the data on the table in the runtime. But physically, data got destroyed from what? Internal table. Am I clear? Okay, we are able to see it on the table because we have binded, but there is no data in the t underscore vbak. It got destroyed. Rambab, is it clear?
I got like in our smart forms and all, even we write the global interface like that, it will not work here.
No.
There we have the initialization, we have the data that we can use across all the right.
Yeah, we can
But
wherever you want, there I can specify that internet. I can use it. It is global. Okay,
okay,
here it is local. Okay,
yeah,
so
that's the reason I
yeah.
want. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If you want to reuse, again, there is a mechanism. I should declare it what? Globally. Actually, how to do that, we'll discuss that in the coming classes. What is the
Okay,
yeah? What is the redundancy in this? We got the reference of the same node twice, na? We got it in what? WDD init. Here we got the reference of the same node, and again, in order to bind the data, here also we are getting the reference of the node. So this kind of redundancy should be what? Avoided. So how to avoid? We'll see that. Another point is to declare that internal tables. What I did here, what I did in the, yeah, here to declare that internal, I'm directly referring to what? Directly referring to what? Dictionary structure. Again, this is not recommended. This is not recommended. What you have to do is dynamically this internal table should refer to this node. Dynamically, the t underscore vbak should refer to what? Vbak node. It should never refer to what? Database objects. Am I clear? So again, this is a kind of what? Not recommended. So how to avoid this direct reference also, we'll see that going forward. Okay. And what is the other redundancy here? That's all. Yeah, anyhow, for vbap node, I got the reference only once. Only where? Inside what? On lead select event. So this is fine. Getting the reference of what? vbap node is fine because anyhow it is used only within this method. Okay, so the things we have to avoid is the scenarios would be like this. A variables, I may use it across the methods. Actually, both these methods are methods of same view, na? Both, sorry, these methods are the methods of what? Same view. Okay, so in this case, that reference I have to use across the methods of the same view. Sometimes I may require to use that variables across the methods, across the views. I may have one more view. I have to use it in what? Across the methods, across the views. So I should declare at component level. So here how to avoid that, we'll discuss that going forward. If you have any doubts in this, please ask. Yes, and we should also address what? How to flash what? Message. So what is the requirement here? Suppose assume that when I execute this, yeah, I'm selecting this row. Assume that the selected sales order doesn't have what? Sales item. So what my customer may ask, if there are no, actually one more thing here. One more thing is, see here. By default, I'm able to see both the tables. Na? My customer will say that this table should be invisible by default. Should be invisible by default. In the runtime, if I select a row, in case if the sales items are there, then only you what? Make the table visible and display the data. If the sales items are not there, okay, he wants to flash the message. Again, he will tell you how he wants that message. Whether you want that message on the view itself or whether you want it in the alert box. Just like in our ABAP, we use message type INA, information message. So all these things, so everything na, is part of, suppose here, so here in every requirement we'll be using what? Message management. Understood? So this topic we'll be using in what? Every requirement. And sometimes what the customer will say, he wants a what? A dialog box to show that particular message. So we should know how to use that. Where is that? Yeah, what is this? Pop-up window. So I want a pop-up window to display that particular messages. Okay, so all this thing will be seeing going forward, and here only you can see. Acha, one more requirement here only. How many rows I am able to select here? Only one row. Now the customer will say like this also. Okay, in this case, the moment I select, what is the event triggered? On lid select. My customer will say that I should able to select multiple rows. I'll hold the control key, I'll select multiple rows, then I'll click on a button. When I click on the button, I have to identify what? Multiple selected rows. Then I have to get the items and display. So what I am going to do for the next 1 week is same kind of example. I'll keep on what? Extending. For identifying single selected row, what is the method we use? Get static attributes. For identifying multiple elements, there would be some other method. So first of all, you have to enable what? Multiple row selection. As of now, I am selecting this, I'll hold the control key. I am unable to select what? Multiple rows. So I should enable what? Multiple row selection. Then I have to perform the action. So same kind of example, I'll keep on extending. So after 1 week, we'll address all the what points. Am I clear? So we are doing it part by part. Done? So if you don't have any questions, I'll wind off for today. Please practice. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue and we'll see how to avoid the redundancy. And if time permits, we'll see how to what? Flash messages in what? Webdynpro views. Any doubts before I wind up for today? I'll do one thing. Since many people are requesting, recordings are not part of the course. Okay, we have never promised that we will give the recordings, but since we are at the initial stage, what I'll do is whatever the classes we have taken from what first class to till today, I'll share that recordings. I need to convert it first of all, so I'll share those recordings and for preview. I'll keep those recordings will be available for you till another 1 week. So just go through that so that you'll understand the rest of the classes. Am I clear? So I'll try to share it from the beginning till date. Don't expect the recording for every session, but since we are at the beginning stage, I'll try to share all these five. How many classes over? Some 6 classes. I'll try to share this 6 recordings by end of today, or some recordings today and some other recordings by tomorrow. So just preview it so that you can understand the rest of the course. Done? So once I share it, I'll drop a mail. Okay. Done. So I'll wind off for today. We'll continue tomorrow then. Right? Chalo.